Rev up your engines! Well, if you want big, here's a 2007 Lincoln Navigator. Do they hold up over time? This got 180,000 miles on it. He bought it used. He did have to replace the radiator, but then again, it's got 180,000 miles on it. Let's take a look under the hood. The 5.4 liter V8 engine in. It's a very dependable engine. Now, realize one thing, these are big vehicles, they're gas hogs. There's nothing you can do about that. Now, this is an older one, so it's a bigger gas hog than the newer ones. He averages about 14 minutes, but then again, it has gone 180,000 miles. Original engine, doesn't burn oil. And realize one thing, a brand new loaded one is $115,900 loaded, okay? He paid $4,500 for this, and he's driven it 40,000 miles so far. The problem with the modern ones is, yeah, they get better gas mileage, but at what cost? Well, here's the cost. This is an ultra reliable, normally aspirated V8 engine. And what's in the new ones? Twin turbo V6 GDI fuel injection and a 10-speed automatic transmission, all of which have been known to have problems. I rarely, if ever, see one of those twin turbo V6 10-speed trannies have 180,000 miles on them. I've actually never seen one that hadn't had the engine or the transmission or the turbos or all of them replaced. This is much more reliable. And yeah, the new ones, hey, they get better gas mileage, but if you had the money you spend in gas that you saved to put in an engine, tranny, 2 turbos, you're going to be so in the hole with what you're spending, you'd wish, I wish they still put V8 engines in these things. Now, the guy who owns this also has a transportation company, and he got a later model Ford with the twin turbo V6, and the engine went out, and it was going to cost him $12,500, so he got rid of the thing. Old ones last, the new ones, they don't hold up like these old ones did. Like if you're somebody who wants to get a last vehicle, get one of these, and when you do have to fix it, you can fix it, keep driving it along. They're not like the modern ones. I would be really iffy if somebody brought me a late model twin turbo V6 with a 10-speed automatic transmission, that if they brought me one to check out as a used car, and if it would have had like 140,000 miles like when he bought this, I would probably tell them not to buy the vehicle for that reason, that there's going to be a big expense in the short run. But for these things, these V8 engines, they have a long lifespan if you take care of them. He does his own maintenance, he takes care of his stuff. This is a lot easier to maintain too, because it doesn't have the twin turbos. It doesn't have GDI fuel injection that's got 1,000-something pound pressure. It just has regular fuel injectors. It's something Ford had made for ages. Now, it is a Lincoln, but it's a design that's been around for quite some time. Now, this vehicle may say Massachusetts, but guess what? It spent most of its time in Carolina. As we look under, I can tell right away this is not a Massachusetts car to start out with, because look, it's all clean. All this metal would be rotting away. It looks brand new because it was a Carolina vehicle. And of course, as we look under, one of the reasons it gets poor gas mileage is because it's got a full frame. They can last forever. You can just keep fixing them. Now, as we look inside, that's the steering rack there. You can see there's no front wheel drive mechanism. This is a rear wheel drive vehicle, and it's plenty fine the way it is. Do you really need all-wheel drive? Most people. Hey, you're carrying a bunch of people on this. This is not an off-road vehicle. Does it look like an off-road vehicle? No. Rear-wheel drive is perfectly fine. You'll get a little bit better gas mileage. If this had been all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, and something this big, you wouldn't even be getting 14 miles a gallon. And so you don't need it. Why buy it? People get carried away with, I want all-wheel drive. You don't need it in most situations, especially something like this. This is such a heavy vehicle. You put snow tires in the back, you could drive it in the winter. And if it was four-wheel or all-wheel drive, Ford has always had problems with their four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive systems. Their rear-wheel drive ones have been around so long, they're tried and true, right? But not their all-wheel and four-wheel drive system. So in this case, you're better off not having it. It's a big, heavy vehicle, plus it rides better. These are nice riding vehicles. You'll see when you take it for a road test. Because if you add four-wheel drive, that also makes worse gas mileage. Plus, when it does brake, big money working on a transfer cases. This is rear-wheel drive with a differential in the back. Ford's made cars like that for over 100 years. And they got a pretty good idea of what they're doing. Look, 180,000 miles. Everything's original except for the radiator. And that's made out of plastic, so you expect that it's going to go out. Look inside now. It's getting older, right? I mean, the wood is cracking. That's foreign for you, but I mean, hey, you can't complain. The seat is still in excellent shape. So you can tell this guy isn't overweight, because if he was, this side would be all worn out, and it isn't. And the previous owners obviously weren't either. Back to the wood inside. Hey, they're still in good shape, and steering wheel and everything. That seat's good, but this is why people buy them. They have an awful lot of room. He's got the third row seats put down because he's got a carrier that's in the back there. He's got a wheelchair in there. Sunroof, moonroof, what do you call it? Because it is a luxury vehicle. This is the top of the line. Now, normally the running boards are broken by now, but check it out. These running boards still work. They come down when you open the door. When you close it, they went back up, and just to prove it, then they go back down again. So start it up. Take it for a spin. So it doesn't have a back camera, but it's got THX certified stereo system here. Boy, that's taking me back. Now, the first thing you notice is this thing's smooth. Now, it does have a check engine light on, so we're going to check that later when we get back. Now, the owner just told me that he took out the air suspension and put in regular shocks. Now, it rides pretty good considering these are the worst roads in the world. Rhode Island, at least in the United States, they get voted every year. And as we go over them, I mean, it rides perfectly fine. But it originally had that really fancy air ride system, and man, when they break, they cost a fortune. So he had them converted over. You can convert these older ones. Now, some of the newer ones, it'd be a real job because it's all in the software of the vehicle, and it would be a pain in the butt. But these older ones, you can get rid of that stuff and you can put on regular shocks and struts on these things. So that's what he did. He was smart. Nobody's coming for once. So here we go. We'll give it a little gas. Now, you hear that engine? Doesn't sound any different than it did today. It came off the showroom floor. Tranny still shifts like a dream. But it's not a race car. This is an extremely heavy vehicle. You know, basically it's the competition to like Suburbans, stuff like that. Big, giant vehicles. You got plenty of engine, but they're not race cars. I mean, you can cruise all day long at 85. There's no problem with that whatsoever. It has to have a big engine because it's a big, heavy vehicle. That's why I don't like the V6s. They can put out turbo horsepower, but they don't have takeoff torque. It's a different feeling. And like I say, the technology, the new ones don't last as long. These do. It'll be a rainy day, but this thing feels solid on the road. Traction control still works on it. It didn't do any kind of spinning when I gave it full power. All those systems are working fine. So let's hook up a scan tool and see what's going on. Intake air temperature sensor high input. That's P0113. And we have oxygen sensor slow response, bank 1 sensor 1, and we have engine torque signal. He was saying there's a little shifting problem. Well, there is. It's the engine torque signal is wrong because it's low on fluid. When they change the radiator, there's a little leak on a hose there, so he's got to put fluid in, and that's why the thing isn't running right. Now, the oxygen sensor on these old cars, you'll get weird readings on them back and forth. I wouldn't even care about that as long as it runs okay. And the intake air temperature sensor, okay, that you can't do anything about. If it runs okay, you live with it. If not, okay, the sensor's all in here. Now, an interesting story, he cleaned the old one and then put it back in, but then he bought another one, put another one in, and it didn't run right, so now he's got the original one back in. Now, the one that he bought, replacement, wasn't an original equipment one. It's one that he got at a discount auto parts store. He thought it didn't feel like it made any difference, so he put the old one on, and it's been running weird since. I think he's probably going to need a new one because probably when he cleaned it, it damaged it. A lot of times they'll get damaged if you clean them. I'm going to reset it. He didn't reset anything, but theoretically, if it fixes the problem, it would reset itself. I think that it's going to need the sensor, but you got to buy an OEM sensor. We will go to erase trouble codes. Okay, now the trouble codes are erased. We'll start it up. You can see the check engine light's off. Well, now I've erased it. So he's going to find out as he drives around. Sometimes it can take weeks. If that code does not come back, if it doesn't trip, then it was because he didn't reset anything. But he did say that he cleaned it, and it acted weird after he cleaned it. I think it might have been damaged, and the aftermarket when he got wasn't any good. So if it does come on, you take 2 screws off, unplug it, put another one in there. But you listen to me when you do this. Be positive you get an original equipment one, because aftermarket sensors for the computer system are so tight. They have to have perfect resistance. Realize these things are only working on a 5-volt reference signal, and they only have milliohms of power. That means hardly any power at all. So they have to be perfectly made, and the Chinese knockoffs are not perfectly made. I've had more people scratch their heads, go all over the place. I had a woman the other day brought a Pontiac, and she'd been to like 5 mechanics. She'd spent $2,500 on parts that weren't even needed. They put a new computer in and didn't fix anything, and it turns out that all it was a cheap Chinese relay that they bought, and it was ridiculous because the cheap relay was $15 and the original equipment one was $39. So I mean, even if there's a bigger difference in price, you gotta go OEM on these things, or you're gonna be cat chasing its tail. Around and around and around, and then you find out that, gee, it was that sensor I did because it wasn't OEM. And for you out there, if you're ever going to clean these things, you got to be totally fanatical. You got to take them off the vehicle, unplug them, and you have to use mass airflow sensor cleaner. You can't use any other kind of cleaner. Then you want to air dry them for at least an hour or so to make sure all the residuals are gone. Then plug it back in. Don't ever do it when they're on the vehicle. I'll tell you that. You got to take them off. So you're looking for a big vehicle. Maybe you don't like the idea that a new loaded one is $115,000. Maybe you can find a $5,000 one that still goes pretty good even years later. And if you got to put a little money into it, let's see, 5 out of $115,000, that leaves you $110,000. So, you know, you got a lot of wiggle room there. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.